from the most openly gay group in America, before panicking and claiming it was all a budget issue. Two institutions. Both tried to suppress the Village People. Both ended up surrendering to them. And both of those stories start the same way, with a French producer walking down a street in New York City, looking up at a building he'd never seen before, and asking a question nobody expected would start anything at all. Chapter 1. The Frenchman who didn't know what a YMCA was. His name was Jacques Morali. He was a French music producer living in New York, gay, flamboyant, deeply in love with the city and its underground nightlife. He'd already done something remarkable. He'd created the Village People from scratch, assembling a group of men to embody the hypermasculine icons of gay culture. The cop, the cowboy, the construction worker, the biker, the Native American chief, the soldier, and turned them into a pop act at a moment when nothing like that had existed before. By late 1977, their first album had done well in clubs and on the dance chart, and Morali was building material for a third record. He was walking through the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan one afternoon when he stopped in front of a building he'd never seen the likes of in Europe. It was the Young Men's Christian Association on West 23rd Street, a massive institutional building offering cheap rooms to young men visiting the city. He went inside. He asked questions. Someone explained what it was. They told him about the cheap rooms, the sports facilities, the wholesome Christian purpose. Morali nodded along. He was also aware of something the brochure didn't mention, that the YMCA's communal spaces, the showers, the pools, the locker rooms had long been known as gathering places for gay men in a city where there weren't many safe ones. He walked back out onto the street and called his lead singer, Victor Willis. He said, "I have an idea for a song." Willis said, "Okay, what?" Morali said, "The YMCA." According to everyone who was there, Morali had the melody, the chorus, and the concept sketched out in roughly 20 minutes. He handed the framework to Willis and said, "Fill in the rest." Willis wrote the lyrics about a young man coming to the city, finding community, finding a place to belong. The song was cheerful, universal, almost aggressively wholesome on the surface, and underneath, for anyone tuned to its frequency, something else entirely. It was released in the autumn of 1978 as the only single from their album Cruisin'. Nobody was quite prepared for what happened next. Chapter 2. Number 2 in America, number 1 everywhere else. YMCA hit the Billboard Hot 100 and climbed. It peaked at number 2 in the United States, held off the top spot, it was said, by a record that happened to be immovable that particular week. But everywhere else it went all the way. Number 1 in the UK, Canada, Finland, France, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Sweden, and Switzerland. It sold millions of copies worldwide. It was the Village People's biggest hit by a distance. And then the arm movements happened. During a performance on American Bandstand in January 1979, the crowd spontaneously started spelling out the letters with their arms during the chorus. Nobody had planned it. It just happened, the way things only happen with certain songs, where the audience invents something the artists never thought of, and suddenly the whole thing is bigger than anyone expected. Those 4 arm movements became one of the most recognized physical gestures in pop music history. You can walk into a stadium anywhere in the world and start spelling YMCA with your arms, and the entire crowd will join in without being asked. Meanwhile, back in the offices of the Young Men's Christian Association, the mood was considerably less festive. Chapter 3. The Lawsuit. On January 13, 1979, just days after the American Bandstand performance, and while the song was still climbing the charts, the YMCA filed a lawsuit against the Village People. The charge was trademark infringement. The organization argued that Morali and his team had used their trademarked name without permission, that they hadn't been consulted, that no arrangement had been made for the commercial use of their brand. What the lawsuit pointedly did not mention, at least in official statements, was any objection to the song's gay subtext or its association with the LGBTQ community. The legal complaint was about the name. Full stop. There were rumors then and since that the real objection was deeper than trademark law. Victor Willis himself has argued in his later years that the YMCA was uncomfortable with the gay associations. Other members of the group have disputed that. The official record shows only a trademark complaint, and the YMCA has consistently declined to confirm any other motive. What the YMCA quickly discovered was that suing a song which was simultaneously #1 in a dozen countries and working its way into the DNA of every wedding reception and sporting event in the Western world was a peculiar strategy. The lawsuit had no obvious endgame. You cannot unring a bell of that size. They settled out of court. The terms were never made public. Both sides declared peace. And then, decades later, the YMCA's own media relations manager told a journalist, "We at the YMCA celebrate the song. It's a positive statement about the YMCA and what we offer to people all around the world." The organization that sued them ended up celebrating them. Chapter 4. The Pentagon comes calling. And then the United States Navy made an even bolder mistake. By the spring of 1979, YMCA had demonstrated something remarkable. People who had nothing to do with the village people's target audience were nonetheless singing the song, spelling out the letters, buying the record. The YMCA itself had become measurably more famous as a result of being sued into the charts. The lesson seemed obvious. The village people were good advertising. So an advertising agency working on behalf of the Navy got in touch with the group's manager, Henry Bilalo. Military recruitment was struggling in the post-Vietnam era. Young men weren't signing up. The Navy needed a hook. They had heard YMCA and they wanted something similar, a big, infectious, recruitment-friendly anthem. Morali and Willis wrote in the Navy in fairly short order, and the lyrics read, on one level, exactly like what the Navy wanted. An invitation to young men to find adventure, travel the world, become part of something bigger than themselves. Morali's producers' instincts shaped it into another enormous pop record. Five, 200 sailors, 6 disco stars, and one very bad morning. In late 1978, Kill